Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to show you how I draw cats. So a lot of you liked my previous video, so I decided to do a bit more with cats. Alright, so this is basically going to be a tutorial, so I'll just be drawing and giving you some instructions. You want to start off with your head, which is usually a circle with two lines to show the direction. This cat is smiling and excited. Maybe she's looking off somewhere at her friend. We don't really know. But so you draw your ears, and since she is looking intently at something, they're going to be pointed forward so that she can listen to it. The snout and the fur is sometimes challenging. This cat has longer fur, and you just want to make sure the angle of the snout faces the right way. Then from the head, you draw a line for your spine, and you start doing some of your chest fur and your neck. This is basically just suggestive lines to show where your body is going to be and what direction your cat is facing. The fur may look a little excessive, but trust me, there are very furry cats out there. Anyway, next you're going to want to do your tail. Since she is excited, her tail is kind of upwards and curved inquisitively. Alright, here are the legs. They can be a bit of a struggle, but basically just follow the little form I'm drawing here. For hind legs, they are more sort of like a box at the top or an angle, and then the reverse of that going down with the foot at the end. The circles represent the joints. So when we draw this on the actual cat, we're going to add like some extra stuff to represent fur and muscles. Now the paws can be challenging for some people, but they're basically just circular or cubic shapes at the end, so don't worry about those too much. Now the front legs are slightly different. They aren't as angular or pointed, so just make them a little more gradual like I've drawn here. And an important thing is to make sure all of your feet are on the same line or sort of ground area. Sometimes people will draw feet that are almost like the character standing on a cliff in completely different places, even though they're supposed to be flat, so make sure not to do that. Now this other hind leg is actually really important. That kind of supports the character because she's actually lifting her paw off the ground here. And you can see from the angles how it kind of folds at the joints, like how these red lines are showing. So she's going to need that extra balance with that back leg spread out nice and wide so that she doesn't fall over. Alright, next we have the tail. I'm just doing some suggestive lines of fluff for that. And I'm going to distort it a little bit because I didn't like the angle it was at. And now I'm ready to make it big enough to fit the canvas. And I'm going to lower the opacity of this layer so that it becomes something I can sketch over and make a new layer for my line art. I begin at the head because that is the area most viewers' eyes are drawn to immediately, and I want to pay a lot of special attention to that. Basically, how I do the line art is I keep an image in my mind of what a cat should look like, and I basically draw over those suggestive lines with the more refined details. So that way it comes out looking like an actual cat. If you are not as experienced with cats, you can use a reference photo to help you with these. That's completely fine. The fur. Fur is usually sketchier and more vague, so when you're drawing that, like, don't do too many bold lines. It can be also hard to get the angle of the jaw correct, as you can see here. Doing open mouths is also surprisingly challenging for me. But as long as you can get it in an angle that looks natural, because this is a stylized drawing, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now, speaking of stylization, you don't want to go too far, otherwise it won't be recognizable as a cat. So that's why I struggled with this fur a little bit. I didn't want to make it too fluffy so that it wouldn't look like the animal it was supposed to look like, but I also didn't want to make it so short it didn't look like a long-furred cat. Now the trick here is to make the fur the same length all over the body. So that means fluffy neck, fluffy chest, fluffy tail, fluffy legs, everything. And if you had a short-furred cat, all of its hair would be short. Alright, now eyes can convey a ton of expression. They are the part of the drawing that the viewer looks to automatically because we are trained to look at eyes to tell someone's expression. So you're going to want to make sure your eyes and your eyebrows, or the tilt of them if you aren't drawing an animal that has eyebrows, conveys the proper expression that matches with the mouth. So since she is excited and happy, she has an open mouth and a smile, and her eyes are slightly widened. They're not slanted, angry, nervous, or anything. They're just open and happy. For my female characters, I like to add eyelashes so that you can tell their gender, but this is just something that I do, and you don't necessarily have to do this. Alright, drawing the other eye. Since this character's at an angle, it's not the same problem of perfection that it would be if she was facing the camera head on. So you just kind of have to make it look like it's in the proper place. It doesn't have to be the exact same shape, but as long as it looks good, it works. Now that I'm done with the basic line art for the head, I want to make sure it's the proper size in relation to my body, and I'll move on to the neck. This part was a bit challenging for me because of the odd angle and the fact that this cat is so fluffy. So I decided to do a quick sketch layer just to show where the whole spine is going, how it's bending, and what the fur ought to look like. So I drew over that, and I think that definitely helped me a lot, so don't be afraid to use that as a tool if you need to in your own drawings. Alright, so this goes back to what I said about making the fur long all over. If you have the fur long on the cheeks and perhaps the tail, but short everywhere else, your cat's going to look really weird. So you don't want to do that. This also works for other furred animals as well, but cats tend to be more stylized and have more varied fur lengths, so this is more cat specific. Sometimes you're going to have to hide your sketch so that you can see your line art, and that's fine. I did have a lot of struggles with this neck, as I've mentioned, but in the end it turned out alright, so. Now, getting the pupils to look like they're not cross-eyed can be challenging for some people, so what I do is I draw the first pupil and then I try to put the other in a place that looks natural. If it doesn't work, I'll just move it around until it does. You can also look at reference for this if you're having a really hard time. Alright, now we move on to the legs. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, there are differences between the front and the back legs. So just try to look at pictures if you need to. At this point, I have drawn so many cats that I automatically know it like that, so I don't need to. But if you're a beginner, you might want to. Also, like I said, keep that fluff, and don't be afraid to edit your sketch if you need to. Mine wasn't exactly perfect, and the hind legs were a little too far away, so I just changed that really quickly so that my line art wouldn't be all messed up. The hind legs do have the slightly different anatomy, so like I said, just look up reference if you need to. It's not that bad once you get a good image of a cat in your mind. You're kind of able to just draw it automatically, so it gets easier as you go along. Now, an important thing when drawing is to keep your hand and your wrist nice and loose. You don't want your strokes to be too stiff so that they end up looking like cardboard lines and just really uncomfortable. Especially when you're drawing a creature as furry as a cat, you're going to want to have a lot of flow in the design. And if you'll notice, there are lines of action among the character, like where her spine is going and how her legs are curving slightly. She's not rigid, and she leads your eye along certain paths. You can actually research this more. I believe this is taught in art class. So yeah, there is actually a science behind drawing, technically speaking. Alright, now I'm just cleaning things up, filling in gaps in case I want to color later and I use my fill tool, and just making sure everything looks nice and neat. This is not mandatory, and if you want to leave yours sketchy or uncolored like I will do in this video, then go right ahead. It's up to you. Really, art is about having fun, so you don't need to worry about following any rules that I or anyone else says. Alright, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and please consider liking or subscribing if you enjoyed.